What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you live from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today is going to be the fifth installment of our NFL Draft Week series as we look at the 2021 NFL Draft, which of course is occurring today starting at 8 p.m. And we don't know how long it'll last, but it'll be exciting. It'll be nice. It'll be nice to see the players be able to hug the commissioner again. Of course, not every player is going to the draft. We've had a few people say no. Understandable. We did have one player also test positive for a viral illness. So he's not able to go, unfortunately, but it's going to be exciting. So, what this video is going to be is this video is going to be discussing the draft, the first round of the draft. We're going to look at the picks. We're going to go pick by pick kind of and go, okay, this is the team, this is their needs, this is who they might target. If your team does not have a first round pick, we will discuss the top pick for everybody. I just won't do draft targets for like a team like the Texans, for example, who don't pick until the beginning of the third round, just because it's kind of, I have no idea. We have no idea how the board's going to look through two rounds. You know, anything's possible. But without further ado, I do want to put out a quick disclaimer here. I do have my phone in front of me, so there's a lot of rumors about trades potentially happening before the draft happens. If one does happen, I will report it. I do have Adam Scheffner ready to go. If he says anything, I'm going to look at it. So, yeah. So, like I said, without further ado, we'll jump right in and we'll start discussing. So, of course, the top pick is the Jacksonville Jaguars, first round pick. And Jaguars had a horrible year. So, we all know who the pick's going to be, but I do want to still discuss their needs. So, they need help pretty much on offense. They can use a receiver, they can use a tackle, they can use a guard even, they can use safety, but their glaring need is quarterback. And that's why it's basically a no-brainer that they're going to pick Trevor Lawrence at one. The only way they don't pick Trevor Lawrence at one is if something crazy comes out. But we've all but seen Urban Meyer say, yeah, we're getting Trevor Lawrence at one. So something insane would have to happen for Lawrence not to go one to Jacksonville. Moving on to number two. Of course, the second overall pick is the New York Jets. Now, I'm good friends with a Jets fan, and when the Jets started winning meaningless games, he was not happy because it made it, now all of a sudden the Jets are not going to get Trevor Lawrence. Okay. You have a decent consolation prize, though. And of course, their needs are pretty blaring quarterback. They need a quarterback. And you could make a case that they could use help all around too. They can use help in the, on the defensive line. They can use help on the offensive line. They could use receiver help. They can use running back help. They can use cornerback help. Sorry. Yes, but quarterback is the number one thing that they need. And frankly, there's a few names that are up there. And one of the big ones is, of course, there's really, to me, there's two names for the Jets. And it's Zach Wilson from BYU and, of course, Justin Fields from Ohio State. Now, originally, it looked like it was going to be Fields, but recently it's really come out to be Zach Wilson. I would be shocked if they end up going with another player. I do think they're going to go with Wilson over Fields, and it might not, end well for Fields. He might fall for a while. We're going to have to see how things go. But if you're a Jets fan, it's going to be an interesting night, that's for sure. They have some, they do have some holes that they have to fix, but they do, they do have a bright future, definitely. They just need to fix some of these problems. And a quarterback, of course, they traded Sam Darnold, so they need someone to step in. Wilson or Fields, whichever one they choose, should be able to do that for them. So the third overall pick currently belongs to the 49ers. Of course, they traded up. They gave up a good chunk of capital to the Dolphins, who had acquired this pick previously from the Texans. So obviously, throwing all the stuff they threw, San Francisco is going to be drafting a quarterback. You don't trade all this draft capital for something that's not a quarterback. So I don't even care about their secondary needs. They don't have secondary needs as far as I'm concerned. They wanted a quarterback. Now, this means they're probably going to end up trading Jimmy Garoppolo between now and, I'd assume, Friday night. They might keep him. We'll have to see what the market is for him. But don't be shocked if Garoppolo's gone. Now, who do the 49ers probably have their eye on? There's multiple names. Of course, whoever the Jets don't pick, either Wilson or Fields, probably Fields. And then there's Mac Jones. He's a sleeper. But recently, there has been a lot of speculation surrounding the 49ers to Trey Lance. So, Trey Lance from North Dakota State. Now, to me, it's a risky pick, but I understand where they're coming from. You do need to make a pick. You do need to take chances in the NFL if you want to succeed. The 49ers, they had an uncharacteristically bad year last year. Part of that's because their whole defense just and their offense even got shredded by injuries. So I'm fine with them doing this. If they think Garoppolo's not our answer anymore, we need to get a quarterback of the future, I'm fine with that. If they keep Garoppolo, I'm fine with that. But what this does is this sets up the table perfectly for the teams after, 4 through 7 to get players that they want. But really, it's exciting for the 49ers. You guys have a bright future. You had a bad year in 2020, but it's really because of injuries. I don't see them having a really bad year again. They're definitely a playoff team in 2021 if they can stay healthy, despite the awful 2020 campaign. So Atlanta's on the board at 4. And Atlanta is in a very interesting position. So the Falcons, of course, they have needs, pretty glaring needs at tight end. They could use some help in quarter at the cornerback room. They can use some offensive tackle help. They can use some offensive line help in general. They can use some help on the defensive line as well. But then there's that underrated need of, the quarterback room. Remember, Matt Ryan, great quarterback, possible Hall of Famer. He's 36 years old. Now, I get it. He's a pocket passer. He doesn't get I don't want to jinx him by saying what I was about to say. But he's a pocket passer. He doesn't leave the pocket much. He's not an RG3-esque player. He's more like a Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady player, where he takes hits, but it's not the biggest thing. So basically, what this means is you're in an interesting, tough position if you're the Atlanta Falcons. Do you go with a quarterback or do you go with another position? Of course, all of the top non-quarterbacks are still on the board at this point, and I believe that the Falcons, they might get a good trade offer. They might get a trade offer from someone, and they might be willing to trade down. This is the first pick in the draft I could really see someone trading down or trading up for. Seeing already as 1 and 2 are probably set in stone, and San Francisco already moved up. You'd have to wow them with a trade. But to me, Atlanta has two choices. You go with the quarterback and you go with Justin Fields at this point, or you go with a tight end in Kyle Pitts. You could go with Sewell from Oregon too, the offensive tackle, but I don't think that's a sexy pick if you're the Falcons. And it's kind of depressing, but it is what it is. And I think that Kyle Pitts would be perfect for the Falcons. They do have that glaring need at tight end, but that doesn't mean they're set in stone. It doesn't mean I'm not an expert, but this would be a good match if you're the Falcons. I'm sure the fans would be very happy if they were to pick Kyle Pitts, but they do need to expect a potential quarterback or a potential trade down. So now the Cincinnati Bengals have the 5th pick in the draft. And the Bengals are another team. They obviously just picked Joe Burrow first overall last year. And Burrow had a great rookie year before he tore his ACL. Now, part of the problem with his rookie year was he was constantly on the move. So the other thing is AJ Green left this team via free agency. So their two biggest needs are wide receiver and offensive tackle, in my opinion. So what does that mean? They need to get a receiver or a tackle. And yes, just like the Falcons, it's not the sexiest pick if you go with a tackle. But trust me, you need to keep Joe Burrow healthy. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? It tells you that they need to go with a guy like Sewell from the from Oregon. So, like I said, it's not the best pick. I get that. It's not sexy. It's not, oh my God, this is the best pick we're ever going to make. But it's a pick that you need to do. If you want to win the NFL, you have to, build through the trenches. We've seen this before. Philadelphia did it in 2017. New England's had a great offensive line in recent years. The Giants have done it when they were good in 2007, 2011. The Seahawks are like one of the few exceptions, but they still had an elite defensive line. You need to win through the trenches if you want to win. Joe Burrow has looked great, albeit in a shortened season, but this is a guy that they need to pick. They need Sewell to step up. He's great value at 5. Some teams might try to offer them a trade up to get Sewell. We'll have to see. Now, Miami originally held the 3rd pick, then they traded down to 12, then they traded back up to 6. So the Dolphins currently hold the 6th pick. Miami doesn't have too many holes. This is a good team that just missed out on the playoffs this year. Now, you can make a case that they need a receiver. You can make a case that they need an edge rusher. You can make a case that they need help in the linebacker core, in the safety position. But I think they're going to go receiver. Now, there's a lot of potential glamour with a trade with the Texans to acquire Deshaun Watson. I don't know if they're going to do it. Deshaun Watson's a very tough player to get a gauge on. I don't want to talk about his off the field issues for obvious reasons, but we're going to have to see how things go with that. It wouldn't shock me to see the Dolphins make a trade for him, but I hope they don't. I think you need to at least give Tua one more year. I know there's been a lot of rumors going out. Oh, Tua, he's not the best. He lost the locker room at some point in the season. I understand, but you have to realize you can't give a guy that you spent a first round pick on a single year unless he has a horrible year like Josh Rosen. If you look at Peyton Manning's stats as a rookie, he looked awful. So you can't rely on 1 year. Some guys just take another year to get, NFL ready. To me, Tua is one of those guys. He was coming off of bad years in college because he got a potential career-ending injury. So to me, give Tua another year. You have to give him another year. So the Dolphins, obviously, ideally for them, Kyle Pitts is on the board here because, yes, he's listed as a tight end, but you can use him as a receiver. He's basically a receiver. So to me, they have a few picks here. There's, of course, Jamar Chase. There's, of course, Devontae Smith. And then there's, of course, the Jalen Waddle. Now, a lot of people are getting very cold on Smith, and I understand that. So to me, I think the Dolphins will go with Jalen Waddle if he's on the board here over Jamar Chase. I understand either way. I do understand going Smith, but to me, it just doesn't make sense to me. So yes, the concerns of weight, which means injury concerns. To me, Devontae Smith is going to be one of the big breakout guys, but I think the Dolphins are just going to go with Jalen Waddle if Kyle Pitts isn't on the board. It makes more sense. He's a more sturdy receiver. You can get more, value out of him. He looks like he's going to be able to stay healthy longer. That's key for this Dolphins team. And like I said, ideally Pitts is on the board, but it doesn't look like he will be. So we have the Detroit Lions on the board at 7. And this is another pick I can definitely see traded. Now, there's going to be some quarterbacks that are still on the board, and there are, of course, quarterback needy teams. So I think Detroit is in position where they might be able to ask a king's ransom to trade. But I do think they're going to stay. I think they're going to stay pat. I think they're going to get themselves a quarterback or a wide receiver. Sorry. Now, they do have some needs other than receiver. They could use help on the O line. They can use help in the cornerback room. So to me, I think they just need to go, okay, tell you what, we basically had to run Stafford out of town because we never gave him good receivers outside of Calvin Johnson. Yes, Marvin Jones is good, but Marvin Jones is gone now anyway. Marvin Jones is not exactly a guy I'd be pumped to have as my wide receiver one if I'm a quarterback. So I think they need to get a key receiver here. And it really comes down to Chase versus Smith. I think that it's going to be tough for them, but I think the smarter choice is to go with Devontae Smith. He's a risky player. Like I said last pick with the Dolphins, he's a risky player. But it makes sense for him to do it. It makes sense for them to do it. He's the best available receiver, to me at least. Yes, I know Jamar Chase is probably a bigger name, but I do like Smith. It gets you the Heisman winner. It makes you say, okay, look, we got this guy. It keeps your fan base at bay. It gives Jared Goff a big name to throw to. So I'd be excited if I'm a Lions fan. But once more, don't be shocked if the Lions trade down. So now we get to the 8th pick, and the 8th pick is the Carolina Panthers pick. So the Panthers, they have some needs specifically in the offensive line and in the cornerback room. So I would have made a case for quarterback before this draft, but obviously they traded for Sam Darnold. So that kind of addressed that need. I do like Darnold. I think he was a very good buy low candidate for this team. So I won't be shocked if they still look in the quarterback position, but I don't think it'll happen in round 1. So at this point, there are still some big names on the board. And one team or one player that I do like for this Panthers team is Rashawn Slater from Northwestern. He fits what this team needs. He's a good tackle, but he can also play the guard. He can play both tackles if you need him to. You can swing him in the guard as a rookie if you don't feel comfortable with him protecting the blind side. So Rashad Slater would be a very good pick for this team. He would fit everything that this Carolina Panthers team needs. Best player available, in my viewpoint, is him. So you can't go wrong with that. So next we get to the ninth pick, which is the Denver Broncos. And once more, you could have made a case for quarterback not too long ago, but they just made a trade. So now the Denver Broncos don't necessarily need a quarterback. They have Teddy Bridgewater, they have Drew Lock. I'm still not ready to give up on Drew Lock yet, but obviously I know he hasn't been doing great. So I get it. I understand why a lot of people want to get rid of Drew Lock. So it is what it is. So there are still some big name quarterbacks on the board to me, but the Broncos, they don't just have that hole. They also could use help in the linebacker room and in the corners. So there's a lot of different names that they can look at. Of course, there's Surtain. Of course, to me, JC Horn, sorry. I do think Surtain's the best cornerback on the board. I do think he'll be their target, but it wouldn't shock me if they trade down as well if another quarterback needy team rings the bell and says, hello, yeah, we'd like to offer you X. So it'll be interesting to see what the Broncos do. Picks 8 and 9 are really going to be potential trades. So next we have the Dallas Cowboys on the clock at pick 10. Now the Cowboys, of course, they recently signed, not recently, but semi-recently re-signed Dak Prescott to a long-term extension. That solves their quarterback position. Now, to me, the Cowboys would still be smart to draft a quarterback, not in the first round, not in the second round, but like the fourth or the fifth round. Get someone get a backup. They do have holes on the offensive line, which is odd to say, but it never surprises me if the Cowboys pick an offensive lineman. Now, their glaring hole to me is cornerback. And I just said Surtain's probably going to go. So it wouldn't shock me if the Eagles, the Cowboys, a bunch of teams trade up here or traded up before pick 9. So I think that the Cowboys are probably hoping Surtain's still on the board. And it's definitely possible that he's still on the board. But I know that there's a lot of talk going with him, with JC Horn, I should say, out of South Carolina, due to his athleticism, sorry. To me, I think JC Horn is a good pick. I do like that pick. I wish it wasn't going to the Cowboys, but we'll have to see. Get an athletic player. He can help, especially in the NFC East. You need all the help you can get. Yes, I understand the NFC East is bad, but look at the weapons that the Giants and the Washington football team have. Yeah, the Eagles don't have one, but it is what it is. So then we get to the 11th pick, which is the New York Giants. Now, this is one pick I can comfortably say I don't see getting traded. We know, they don't trade much. It's not necessarily the Giants, it's their GM, but the Giants do have some holes as well. They could use a receiver. They can go with an edge rusher. They can go with a linebacker. They have a lot of directions they can go. So to me, the Giants it makes sense for them to go with whoever the best available receiver is. And I think Jamar Chase would be an amazing addition to this team. Once more, I do understand it's not their biggest need, but what you're doing is you're making yourself an elite offense. You're kind of countering Dallas adding cornerback, JC Horn there. And you're kind of saying, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to get ourselves another weapon. Yes, I know you got Teddy Galladay in free agency. I understand that. But what you're doing is you're going to get yourself another big name receiver to help make your team that much better. You're basically saying, Danny Jones, you get one more year. If you have a bad year, you're done. We're doing everything we can to get you from okay to good. You need to prove yourself. So it's going to be interesting. Next, we have the 12th pick, which is, of course, the Eagles. Now, the Eagles have a heck of a lot of needs. I'm going to be brief on this one. You guys know I'm an Eagles fan. I don't want to go on like a 20-minute discussion about the Eagles here, but they can use help basically anywhere. It wouldn't shock me to see them pick any position whatsoever, excluding running back. But to me, it wouldn't make sense to go with some positions. The big needs are going to be cornerback, safety, wide receiver, not in that order. Now, they're also linebacker. Now, linebacker is not a big glaring need like some people would tell you. So I'm going to kind of ignore it. Interior offensive line somewhat is still a big need, but not the biggest. So to me, with what I just did, the Eagles are going to be very upset because all the big names are gone. And that, of course, really hurts them. All the big names that they would be looking for are gone. Now, that leaves Mika Parsons, the linebacker, and Kwity Paye, the edge rusher. Now, I might be mispronouncing Kwity Paye's first name. I do apologize if I am. But to me, I do think Kwity Paye makes sense for the Eagles. They always have valued building through the line, and they've always kind of looked away from the linebacker position. Now it's a new regime, and that's completely understandable. But to me, it makes sense for the Eagles to just say, all right, you know what? Kwity Paye is a guy they've been connected to in recent days, week, 2 weeks. So to me, it makes sense if they either try to trade down to get another pick or two and get Kwity Paye, or if they just pick him here at 12. They also might try to trade up to get a quarterback. There's been a lot of discussion on that. We'll have to see what the Eagles can do. It's an older team. They just need all the help they can get. I'm fine with them trading down. So now we get to the 13th pick. The 13th pick belongs to the LA Chargers, and the Chargers find themselves in an interesting position here. They have a lot of different directions they can go. They do have some needs all over the board. They can use help on the offensive line, basically any defensive position. They could use tight end assistance. So other than edge rusher, maybe probably could still use another edge rusher to help out Bosa. But to me, I think one big need for them is offensive line, and then there's that guy that they're looking at, Christian Darrensaw from Virginia Tech. I know they've been connected to him in recent days, recent weeks. So to me, Darrensaw makes sense for the Chargers, but honestly, they're going to be a real wild card. They can go any position whatsoever. The Minnesota Vikings are on the clock at 14, and the Vikings, they can use help on their offensive line, anywhere on their offensive line, and on their edge rusher position. I just don't think it wouldn't shock me to see them go really anywhere. It wouldn't shock me to see them go, oh, hey, we could use a quarterback. I don't think they're going to do it, but it wouldn't shock me. So the Vikings are once more another wild card. But one player that I know they've been connected to is defensive tackle Christian Barmore from Alabama. He would definitely help this team. He would help their defensive line. This team finished near the bottom of the league in sacks last year, bottom of the league in pressures last year. So Kwity Paye makes sense to me at this pick, but I already have him going to the Eagles. So Barmore makes a little more sense at this point. Gives you a good edge or a good defensive middle line pressure. Very good, very helpful if you're the Vikings. So after that, we have the Patriots on the clock at 15. I don't necessarily know if the Patriots will be on the clock at 15. I do think they're going to trade their pick. Now, the Patriots, they have a lot of connections to the quarterbacks, linebackers, and even receivers, especially since Edelman retired. So the quarterback room for New England, yes, they did re-sign Cam Newton, but if you talk to Patriots fans, they don't think Newton's the answer. I agree. So to me, I think the Patriots are going to sit here and they're either going to go Lance or Mac Jones. I think they'll go Mac Jones. I think they like what Mac Jones brings to the table. I don't blame them. Mac Jones is a very good player. He's an old school player, just like Brady was. Belichick's an old school coach. It would make sense to me. Don't like the Patriots, and I'd be terrified of either of them. I'd be terrified if Justin Fields falls to this team. So we'll have to see how this goes. Now, the 16th pick currently belongs to the Arizona Cardinals, and the Cardinals are a team. Okay. Caleb Ferry just tested negative for the viral illness, but I don't know if he's going to be able to go to the. Yeah, he's not going to be able to go to the draft, but still, that's good to know. So, yeah, sorry. Like I said, Schefter, anything he tweets, I'm looking at right now. So, we were talking about the Cardinals. So, the Cardinals could use help in probably the back half of their defense. Their defensive line is still good. They could use help on their interior offensive line, and they could even look at a receiver if they wanted to. So the Cardinals definitely have some potential holes, and they did lose Patrick Peterson, so they're definitely in the market for a cornerback. And we'll have to see what they do. But to me, it's interesting that Schefter just tweeted about Caleb Farley. I think Caleb Farley makes sense. Now, I understand that Caleb Farley could potentially fall to the second round, but hear me out. Fairley is a very talented athlete. Very talented athlete. He has a lengthy injury history. I understand that. But the Cardinals are going to be willing to take a chance on him. They may trade down, but we'll have to see how this goes. It won't shock me if they trade down, is basically what I'm trying to say. But I think he just fairly makes sense for this team. Gives them another corner. Kirkpatrick can help train him for a year or two. So it would be nice if you're a Cardinals fan. So now we get to the 17th pick, and that is the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Raiders kind of addressed a little bit of a hole when they picked up a big name running back in free agency. And that leaves them basically, they need help on their interior defensive line, their offensive tackles, and their linebackers. So the Raiders can go a lot of different directions. They could trade down, but I mean, the problem with this team is they don't have a strong defense. And I don't think I've had Parsons go yet. So if Parsons is on the board, the Raiders are waiting 2 seconds. Once they hear the picks announced, they're going to run up to the clock, run up to the podium and say, we want Parsons. Another guy I know they've looked at is Zavon Collins from Tulsa, the other linebacker. So we'll have to see how things go between those two. I know they've looked at Trayvon Morwing. So there's a bunch of different directions that this team could go in. It'll be nice to see the Raiders pick defense. Now, this isn't the old school Raiders where they would only value a guy who has elite speed, but still, we're going to have to see how things go with this team. Next, we have the Miami Dolphins back on the clock with the 18th pick, and I already have them addressing a need. So now they're looking at their secondary needs, edge rusher, linebacker, edge rusher, running back, linebacker, safety, maybe another receiver, maybe. And another guy that they like is Kwity Paye, but I have him off the board already. So there are still some names for them to look at, but there's just so many different directions. It wouldn't shock me to see the Dolphins trade down. Once more, it wouldn't shock me to see them make a trade this pick away for quarterbacks, but we'll have to see what they do. There's still Jalen Phillips, the edge rusher from Miami. So that one would make sense too. Keep yourself going. Asante Samuel Jr. still on the board. That one would make some sense as well. But the Dolphins there's so many different directions. I don't even want to take a guess on who they're going to go with because I don't think the Dolphins will be on the clock at 18. So the 19th pick belongs to the Washington football team. And Washington, I had to think that. I'm like, wait a second, Washington made the playoffs. But so Washington's a good team. Washington has a great pass rush. So they do have some needs. There's no doubt. They can use help on their offensive line. We saw it against the Buccaneers in the playoffs. They can use another receiver if one falls to them. They can use another linebacker. I do think they'll look at the linebacker position. And I know that I don't want to pronounce his name because I have not said it before in my life, so I don't want to butcher him. The outside linebacker from Notre Dame, Jeremiah. Like I said, I don't want to butcher this man's last name, so I'm not going to say it. But I think he's going to be what the Washington team is looking for. I also wouldn't be shocked if they go with Vera Tucker, the offensive lineman. But once more, just like I said before, offensive line, specifically a guard, far from a sexy pick. So I understand if they pass on him and they go, all right, look, we need to get a defensive player. We'll get a playmaker. We can show better highlights. We can sound better about it. So now the 20th pick belongs to the Chicago Bears. Now the Bears, this is a team that actually made the playoffs, but they are a sneaky quarterback needy team. Remember, Mitch Trubisky's gone. He walked. He signed with Buffalo as a free agent. Now, yes, they do have Nick Foles, but are you really sold on Foles as your franchise quarterback of the future? It wouldn't shock me to see the Bears trading up for somebody, but I think they're kind of stuck where they are. And I think tackle Tevin Jenkins is a big name for them. There's also Greg Newsome III. Now, he's a cornerback, or second, sorry. He's a corner, but Samuel Cosmi is a tackle. I think they're going to stick somewhere in the offensive line, possibly look at secondary help. I still have Vera Tucker on the board, so I could see them going Vera Tucker here. But I think they're a sneaky team to trade up. So that wouldn't surprise me in any way if they trade up, get a quarterback. They could also be on the, they could go for anyone really. I could see them going many directions. They could try to trade for Deshaun Watson. I don't necessarily know if that's going to happen. I wouldn't want it to happen if I'm a Bears fan, but tis what it is. So next we have the Indianapolis Colts on the clock at 21. And the Colts are another interesting team. So their needs are really offensive tackle. They could always use assistance on the offensive line. They could use help in the receiver room. They can use help in the cornerback room. So I see this team even looking at the edge rusher position. But I think that Samuel Cosmi, who I mentioned the last pick with the Bears, or 2 picks ago with the Washington team, I could see him going off the board here to Indianapolis. Once more, it wouldn't shock me to see Indianapolis trade out of this position. There's a lot of potential trades that could happen, and this is a team that I could see say, okay, tell you what, we'll do that. We'll do that. We'll trade. We'll do whatever. Vera Tucker would also be on the board for this pick. So the Tennessee Titans are on the clock at 22. And Tennessee is another good team that a lot of people constantly just look over and they kind of go, okay, well, the Titans are good, but they're not that good. They could always use help at the edge rush position. They need to start getting pressure on the quarterback. They could also use a receiver. They can also use an offensive lineman. Vera Tucker's still on the board, but I think they're going to pass on him. I think they're going to go with that defensive help. And I know that there's Aziz Ohalari. So I could see him go off the board from Georgia to Tennessee. He would help get pass rush immediately. He looks pro ready already, so that'll help the team. Now, he did have a knee. He did deal with an injury, I know, in college. I know that he isn't a great run stuffing defensive lineman, but I can still see the Titans going for him and say, tell you what, we need the pass rush. We'll throw him out here on second and third down situations. We'll take him off the field on first downs, on obvious runs. He'll have a couple speed bumps along the way, but he should help this team hands down. So the New York Jets are back on the clock at 23. They acquired this pick from Seattle. So I already have them getting a quarterback. I'm assuming it's going to be Wilson. Now, to me, the Jets are probably looking at whoever the best player available is. And at this point in time, I would definitely say it's Vera Tucker. I think Vera Tucker would be an amazing pick for the New York Jets here. He would step in, and it makes too much sense for me for the Jets to go with an offensive lineman here. The previous regime didn't do it, so that's what happens. Joe Douglas is coming in from Baltimore and Philadelphia. These are two teams that always invest in the offensive line. It makes too much sense for them to invest in the offensive line. So now we have the 24th pick, which is Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are a potential team that could go for a quarterback as well, but it's not their biggest need. They also have, holes in the cornerback room and the offensive line, all over the offensive line, and the running backs position. Now, the running back position is the big one. Everyone right now is saying Najee Harris to the Steelers at 24. It might be a reach, but the talent is there. Najee Harris is a great player. He would fit this position. He would help this team. Obviously, Connor left the team in free agency, so they could use a running back. It would not shock me to see them trade down because they could probably still get Harris towards the end or later portion of the draft or the first round. We'll have to see. But it's going to be nice to see, them get a big name running back. The first running back off the board goes to the Steelers. That's an old school organization getting an old school position. I'd like it. So the Jaguars are on the clock once more at 25. Now they got this pick from the LA Rams. So the Jaguars already have them getting Trevor Lawrence. So they still have some holes, of course. Once more, their big holes are offensive line help, receiver help, and safety help. So to me, it makes sense for the Jaguars to go with whoever the best available offensive lineman is. And I kind of lost track on all my O linemen that I may have passed up on at some points in this draft. But I do know that one guy they've kind of had some connections with is Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State. So that one wouldn't surprise me if he goes off the board basically Urban Meyer at one point said, "Yeah, our offensive line is pretty good, but we have other positions to address," and that's basically saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to look at help for the O line." And you might as well get a guy who can help protect your franchise quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. It wouldn't shock me, no matter how they do it, but it makes too much sense for me to see them keep a big name on the team, get a big name offensive lineman to help protect Lawrence. So the 26th pick belongs to the Cleveland Browns, and the Browns don't have major needs. They could always get another edge rusher to help out Myles Garrett. They could always go receiver. They could always go corner, and they're a huge question mark. This is a team that I could definitely see trading back to acquire an additional pick in the future. It wouldn't shock me. Now, one guy that they've had some they've been talking to is Gregory Rousseau from Florida, Miami, Florida, and he's an edge rusher. I know he's got real potential. He's been talking to the Browns a lot. This is a guy who's probably going to be talking mid-20s for a pick, possible early second rounder. This makes sense for the Browns to pick him here. They could also go with his teammate, Jalen Phillips, but I'm not exactly sold on Phillips to the Browns. The 27th pick belongs to the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens do have some holes as well. So the Ravens need edge rusher help, offensive tackle help, safety, and receiver help. Now, I think the Ravens will get Jalen Phillips. I wasn't sold on the Browns because they haven't talked to him as much, but the Ravens have been talking to him a lot. He does have health concerns, which is why another reason why I see the Browns kind of saying, okay, we're going to kind of back off here. So I think Jalen Phillips makes sense to the Ravens. They're in a similar position to the Browns, but they're not in dire situations. Do everything we can. We got to make sure that the Ravens, that we get a guy to win today. The Browns kind of want to win today, so they're going to go with a safer pick. The Ravens are going to go with a little bit more risky pick with a higher upside. Now, the 28th pick belongs to the New Orleans Saints. And the Saints have a bunch of different directions they can go in. They have some needs, specifically on the receiver room. They could use help. Michael Thomas, obviously, we saw what happens when he's injured. The Saints offense, still great, but the receiver production was not there. They could use help on the edge rushers, linebackers, corners. So they're all over the place. And to me, the Saints, one guy that stands out is Asante Samuel Jr. This is the first guy in the NFL that I can specifically tell you I remember watching his father play constantly. So seeing Samuel Jr. drafted is going to hit me. But Asante Samuel Jr. is a big name. He might be considered a bit of a reach at this stage. Some people see him as a second-round pick, but it is what it is. If that's the case, it is what it is. So I think he makes sense. They have some other holes that they could address, but I just don't see any big name linebackers on the board. I don't see any big name tackles on the board. So, yeah. The 29th pick belongs to the Green Bay Packers, and the Packers have a few different directions it can go. Obviously, quarterback is not one of them. They need to, in my opinion, they need to finally get Aaron Rodgers a weapon in the first round. So right now, the way the board has fallen, it's not going to happen. All the big name receivers are off the board. All the big name tight ends are off the board. Granted, it's just Kyle Pitts. And I don't see this team going running back. So I think they're just going to say, all right, tell you what, we're going to get ourselves a offensive lineman. One guy who's still available. Interesting. I'll say that one in a second. But one guy who's still available is tackle Alex Leatherwood from Alabama. He could help this team. He is built. He's going to be a tough guy to get through if you're a defensive player. So he has experience all across the line, excluding center. He has great speed, specifically as an offensive lineman. He hasn't allowed a lot of pressure. He hasn't allowed a lot of sacks. This makes sense to me for the Packers. Now, Schefter just tweeted that the New Orleans Saints are trying everything they can to trade up into the top 10 to get a quarterback. That's an interesting potential tidbit of knowledge to look at. To me, the Saints definitely could use a quarterback. Drew Brees just retired, and I'm not exactly sold on any of the players that they have in the quarterback position, but it's going to be very exciting to watch what they do. Apparently, they're a sleeper team. So the 30th pick belongs to the Buffalo Bills. And the Buffalo Bills are going to be one of the teams to watch. They don't need quarterback help for the first time in a while. This is good. I enjoy watching Josh Allen play. But they do need help in the running back room. We saw a lack of a run game after a couple injuries. They could use help in the corners, with the edge rushers, and with the receivers. So to me, the Bills are probably going to kind of go with a best player available approach here. And there are still some big names on the board. I don't think I've mocked Xavier Collins to anyone yet, the linebacker, and he would help because what he can do too is he can help edge rush. He can help get to the quarterback, and that's something that the Bills can use help with. So it would be a nice addition to this team to get him. I'd be excited as a Bills fan in the AFC. They're my AFC team, so we'll have to see how things go. Now, the 31st pick would have belonged to the Chiefs, but they traded it to the Baltimore Ravens relatively recently, in fact, for some offensive line help. And this is another position where I can see the Ravens just kind of going best player available. And Terrace Marshall has been gaining a lot of traction as a receiver to sneak into the first round. To me, Marshall makes sense at this pick. So Marshall, he tested well at the combine, or not at the combine, at his workout, at his team workout. And there are injury flags. He's an exceptional talent. The problem is injury concerns are there. So I don't necessarily know if the Ravens are going to stay on the board at 31. They might trade down and go, okay, tell you what, we're going to take whoever the best player, we're going to take the best offer. Someone's going to want a fifth year option. That wouldn't shock me. We'll have to see how things go. Now, I know there's a lot of questions, but we'll have to look at them later. So the 32nd pick is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the reigning Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers, unfortunately. And the Buccaneers do have some interesting needs across the board. Now, you can make a case for quarterback. Will I? Heck no. Tom Brady will probably find me if I do that. They could use help in the receiver room, despite just re-signing Antonio Brown. They could use help as the edge rusher. They can use help on the offensive line. They could use help anywhere just to help get younger. Now they are returning all 20. They are returning all 22 starters from the 2020 campaign. That's the first time that's ever happened. But to me, the Buccaneers are just going to kind of go with whoever they feel is the best player available. There's a lot of names, and I won't be shocked if they go with Creed Humphrey from Oklahoma. He's a center. You always have a random surprising pick of an offensive lineman. To me, Humphrey would make sense here. He fits the hole. He fits the mold of this team. He would help this team stay well, stay up there, stay talented. So, like I said, we'll kind of have to see how things go. But, yeah. So then we have the teams that don't have first-round picks. So the Houston Texans, they don't have a first-round pick. They don't have a second-round pick. Houston's first pick is 67 overall. They definitely could use some help across the board. This team, nobody saw this team just fall off a cliff the way they did. They could use help anywhere. Once more, it wouldn't shock me to see this team trade away Deshaun Watson and just completely embrace a rebuild. But the big needs for them are corner, defensive line, tight end, offensive line, receiver. That's a lot of needs for a team that doesn't pick until the third round. Like I said, they might as well dangle some picks or whatever and say, oh, hey, Deshaun Watson, you want him? We'll trade him for a couple picks. We'll have to see how things go. But the Texans, they need a lot of things to go right. So then we have the Seahawks. The Seahawks are a team that they could use help on the offensive line. They could use help in the cornerback position. They can use help at the edge rush position. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do. Their first pick is going to be the 56th pick. So, like I said, I'm not going to be predicting that far down in the draft. There's a lot of positions they can go for. They could definitely try to trade up. They could even potentially trade Russell Wilson. I would be absolutely shocked if they do that, but it wouldn't be the biggest surprise in the draft. The draft is always full of surprises. So, yeah. Uh, the last two teams we have to discuss are the LA Rams and the Kansas City Chiefs. So we'll go with the LA Rams first. The Rams are definitely a talented team. They just got themselves Stafford. So they could still use help along the offensive line. They could use a tight end. They could use a linebacker. They could use some pass rushing help. So what do I think they'll do? Probably go with whatever the best available players in those positions. So Rams, it's not going to be a pretty year for you guys, possibly, unless you get some offensive line help. I think O-line's the biggest hole for this team right now. They could use help anywhere, though, really. They're a good team. It's just you're in a very good division. You got to play the Cardinals. You got to play the 49ers, who I think are going to resurge. You got to play the Seahawks. So, yeah. Now, the last team that we have to look at is Kansas City. Kansas City is the reigning runners-up in the NFL. And, in the NFL in general. So, I don't know exactly what they're going to be looking to do. There's many positions they can look at, but it would not shock me to see them go with a receiver. It would not shock me to see them go offensive line. It'll be a very interesting day, that's for sure, for the Chiefs in general and every team. So that was kind of the preview for the draft. The big holes for every team, positions, potential players I could see them going for. My picks are not perfect. This is not a mock draft. I'm not an NFL draft expert, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was the 5th video of our draft week. Definitely make sure to check back in tomorrow. I'm going to recap the first round, all the trades, all the picks. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a good rest of your day.